The Dank Pod Stash is back again, episode 82, State of the Boogie, with homie Andrew Cosgrove. Before we jump into that, super shout out, big thank you to our Dank Pod Stash super supporter and above level patrons. Maxwell, Dennis, Dave, you guys are the shit. Thank you so much for supporting the show. And before we go any further, I got to remind you also that the Dank Pod Stash is officially sponsored by Anarchy Lifting. It's time to get hashtag Boogaloo ready and in fighting shape. Greg Papanicholas is going to get you there with personalized meal plans, training, group support, and tons of amazing fitness and motivational resources and knowledge, including the Project Sparta Facebook group. You can go to anarchyliftingcoach.com and learn more about Greg's work. When you're ready to get signed up and get fit, go to gregpapanicholas.clickfunnels.com/opt-in and get started on your path to health. And those URLs will be in the show description. No need to try to memorize them as I say them. I was in Project Sparta. It's great. 100% true, everything in this ad. Greg is a master of his trade. He's going to help you out. So get to anarchyliftingcoach.com now and get after it. We also have a special offer, for listeners from friend of the show, author and content creator Shane Radliff of Liberty Under Attack Publications. You can take 10% off your order by using coupon code DANK10. Just go to libertyunderattack.com. They have books focusing on self-liberation, freedom strategies, solutions, and more. Current books include Hashtag Agora, Second Realm book on strategy, Ben Stone's Sedition, Subversion, and Sabotage, and Shane's very own Vanu, A Strategy for Self-Liberation, among many other titles. They also offer assistance to new authors throughout the publishing process, including editing, proofreading, formatting for Kindle and paperback, and full-service audiobook production. That's Liberty Under Attack Publications. Share your story, find your freedom. Special shout out to Voluntary Apothecary. Voluntary Apothecary was kind enough to send me a sample care package full of awesome beard care products, including beard oil, mustache wax, combs, and more. You can check out their amazing products at dashtamer.com and voluntariapothecary.com. Be sure to check the episode description for those links. And now, without further ado, let's jump into this motherfucking episode.
Enemy of the state.
An enemy of the state.
Enemy of the state.
Dank Pod Stash.
You're listening to Enemy of the State's Dank Pod Stash. Check out thedankpodstash.com to find every episode of the Dank Pod Stash, links to support the show via our BitBacker and Patreon, Dank Pod Stash merchandise, and much more. If you'd like to advertise on the Dank Pod Stash, email us at dankpodstash@gmail.com. All right, look who we got back. If you're watching on YouTube, that is. We got Andrew Cosgrove back on the Dank Pod Stash. We're going to talk about pretty much state of the boog, how things are looking. There was another protest for Duncan Lemp yesterday and some incidents surrounding that were, I don't know. There's a whole lot of words to describe those, so that's one thing we'll be talking about. But how's it going, man?
Pretty good. Just paying attention to all this stuff. Dealing with the Rona. It's not great in my state in terms of tyrants. So just hanging in there.
Yep. Yeah, that's probably another thing we'll be talking about too. Because, the lockdowns keep getting extended, and there's obviously protests for people wanting to go out and go back to work, which is good. And then, I don't know, there's all kinds of shit around this. It's a wild fucking time, and this whole new normal thing. I don't like this.
We're dealing with a lot of stuff at once.
Yeah, a whole lot of fucking stuff. One of the most interesting things, too, is some of the memes going around saying they're like from the Revolution with George Washington and stuff, saying, we boogalooed in a smallpox epidemic. Y'all are a bunch of pussies, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and in the instance of the Revolution and a lot of other boogs, the war was brought to them, as I keep saying. There's tons of people that always are saying, why don't you fucking do something? Why don't you do something? And, I think most of the time insiders are probably feds. I think they're trying to get people to commit a crime so they can get them But in some cases, it's disappointing when people aren't doing something when the aggression's being brought to them. And watching the live videos from the Duncan Lemp protest yesterday, I believe Allegheny Rescue Company Facebook page had the live videos. They had people there. I can't remember if Oldman from Big Igloo Boys was there or not, but he had some stuff to say about it. He's been on the show too, some good stuff. And there were some arrests made, I believe, after the protest, and then one before the protest for someone who was planning to go there, and there was some misinformation about both of those. Did you get a chance to look into any of that stuff? I know you were looking at the Allegheny page.
Well, I'm still kind of confused about what happened, because I know people got their cars towed, which, as far as I can understand, they just let it happen. Which, again, I'm not trying to be a dick, but if you're letting the police tow your cars at that point during a protest, we've got a fucking problem.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly, again, my understanding is one of the Allegheny boys or someone from a separate group that was joining the Allegheny boys was flashbanged in his car. Just all kinds of reports coming out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one.
And now, as of late last night, I'm seeing that it's not just people's cars were being towed, that they were also being arrested. And according to them on their page, potentially facing felony counts. Right.
I've been watching the Allegheny Rescue Company's Facebook page for more updates on the Borther who was arrested. And so I guess what I shared from them was that he had a flashbang thrown into his vehicle, but he wasn't in it. And on the original post, it sounded like he was in it, and they talked to him and his girlfriend, because she reached out, I guess. And what their latest edit on here says, after talking to Mike, and that's Mike Hartz, who was arrested. I think his Instagram handle is at taskforce_megaphone. It said, after talking to Mike, he told me that the police threw flashbangs at his vehicle, not inside of it. And this is after a long-standing feud with neighbors, apparently. Sounds like anti-gun neighbors who have called the cops on him for just a ton of different things, and he's being charged with some disturbing the peace and stuff like that. And I guess it says that they call the cops on him almost daily for jogging with his rifle. So it's all bullshit, both from the neighbors and from the police, on why they're harassing this guy, because fucking jog with a rifle if you want to. That's not a fucking crime, and, even if it was a crime, fuck them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you mentioned it a minute ago about how in previous quote unquote boogs that the fight was brought to them. And at what point do we decide that it's been brought? Because if they're trying to, we know it was thrown outside of his car instead of into his car, but if they're fucking flashbanging people for disturbing the peace, that's it. And it's not just that, they'll kill you over that.
Mm-hmm.
And so at what point do we say, okay, it's been brought, it's here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been the case for a long time. Again, I'm not trying to be a dick, but we have to come to some consensus about what's going to happen here.
Right. Well, and we can see the communication as far as coming to a consensus is pretty much dog shit between all the people involved in the protests and supporting from further away, because this is a continent away from me. There's some people closer who can't go for different reasons, and everyone likes to compare it to the American Revolution, which we're going to talk about some of that as well. But the shot heard around the world. They were talking about standing steadfast, and if the fucking British want to bring it, let them bring it, and let it start here. It was obviously different because there wasn't a line of people, a bunch of boog boys holed up at Duncan Lemp's house. He was shot in his sleep. But that seems like a shot heard around the world, at least for people into Boogaloo, And not to mention all the other innocent people that are being killed.
It's certainly worth being one.
Yeah, from red flag laws, whatever. And then the thing that concerns me with the protests, like we were saying, like you're saying, you know, where's the line? And I'm looking at the Allegheny Rescue Company page again here. And so what they're saying is that approximately 20 cop cars pulled up to a car with 3 protesters leaving, and that's the Duncan Lemp protest in, what was it, fucking, where are they at again? I can't remember, but leaving and had them at gunpoint, and they'll post more details when they can.
I think it's Maryland, isn't it?
I believe it is Maryland, yeah. And then Big Igloo Boys, I believe, yeah, it's Oldman. He issued a thing. I'm going to read it here on the Big Igloo Boys Facebook page. It said, the protest was a success with the exception of some excitement at the end. Since the inbox, Discord groups, and almost every form of communication I have is being flooded, I now have to address it. And there's another problem. There's no centralization in communication, which centralization, you know, that opens you up to quite a few things, but it's tangled. It's a tangled mess is what it is, the communications. But continuing, no peaceful protesters were not arrested, no matter what you heard or saw. Those of us who weren't acting like clowns weren't even talked to, not by anyone. The people arrested had left, then drove back, screeching tires and hanging out of the car, sitting on the doors as they drove by. I'm also told that there were other reasons I don't really care to get into. So his too long didn't read. They were not arrested for peacefully protesting. With any event like this, there's always going to be extra scrutiny. They'll look for any reason to break it up or make arrests. This wasn't an excuse to come out and be an embarrassment to Duncan's memory or those of us that view the boog as a philosophy instead of a one-time event. Situational awareness development from old men. So, of course, they're going to look for any fucking excuse to arrest people at a protest. And if you're going to act like a fucking retard, then you're going to get attention on you from that. But if you're going to try to do something like that, that's obviously going to get the attention of the cops, and then just stand there and get arrested. What's the fucking point? Exactly.
I mean, why are you drawing the attention to yourself? Do you just want to be arrested? Do you just think that's cool? Because I don't think it's cool. I think it's dangerous. I think if you are actually on our side, you have now potentially removed yourself from your own actions from our side. The more that shit happens, the less people we have. And what if, I mean, they could have shot everyone in that car. Mm-hmm. And it actually almost surprises me that they didn't shoot everyone in that car. Is it worth that? Is it worth it that you aren't going to stand fast? You're going to let them arrest you, or they're going to fill your car full of bullet holes? To me, it's not.
Mm-hmm. And I was speaking to some people too about the legality of weapons that protesters were bringing into Maryland, or who are already there to go to this latest Duncan Lemp protest. And it's like, well, what do they expect if they're going to bring weapons that are illegal there? And it's like, what the fuck kind of attitude is this? Like, yeah, sure, what did they expect? But now we're talking about caution around illegal weapons when we're going to protest, you know, and illegal weapons. It's not even like crazy, like fucking rocket launchers and full autos. And
that's shit. Not a real thing.
No,
that's not real.
It's not real. And it's why is this a concern if you're going to a place to protest murderers who literally murdered someone in their street and show them that you're not going to back down? Like, what? It just doesn't make any sense to me. This is all these Boogalloos. It's all peaceful protest Boogalloos is what it is.
Yeah, and I don't want to sit here and sound like a fucking hypocrite, because I stood on this same podcast after the Virginia rally and talked about how I felt, and it's a little more personal to me because I was there. I felt that even though nothing had happened, at the very least, we didn't follow the laws while we were there. We went in with the expectation of violence happening. We didn't necessarily go in saying we're going to fire a shot, but we fully expected violence to happen. And what I'm seeing at everything that's gone down over the last couple of days, they're going in with the expectation of being peaceful. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to sound like a hypocrite, but in these instances, I didn't go expecting to be peaceful. I expected the worst and almost wanted the worst, because at least then, with all those people there, the world would see. They would see the slaughter. And something would start. I know that sounds kind of morbid, but I mean, you expect bad things to happen at a situation like that. And these people went wanting to be peaceful, and I don't understand why you want to be peaceful with murderers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a really convoluted, complicated subject to get to the nuts and bolts of, because I know we're not telling people to go out and just fucking start shit randomly. No, I'm just trying to understand the mindset behind backing down at this point. And there's another thing that happened that made the news. Some people that run in the same groups that we run in on Facebook, there was one that went, and maybe a couple that went to, I believe, a Dallas hair salon that is opening up despite the orders in Texas to stay closed, and stood there armed while the police went there with threats of citations. Then I guess the armed quote-unquote guards went and got lunch, and while they were at lunch, the police came back and cited the business owner. And I don't understand it. Like, you can show up with a gun anywhere legal and stand there and do nothing, and then they get cited anyways. Like, what's the point? You know, and they're saying this is optics. We want to show them that
you're just
it's
a
peaceful.
decoration at that point.
Yeah, they want to show them that this is our last peaceful offering. And how many last peaceful offerings have there been?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we have one once a week. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I keep going back to, it's not just that these instances where a business like you're talking about gets cited anyway, regardless of armed people's being there. It's not just that it didn't accomplish anything because the business still got cited. It's also, it didn't accomplish anything, plus you put yourself in danger for no reason. Because you just so happen not to get a trigger happy cop that walked by you to cite the business. Just so happened. Mm-hmm. But it could have been, and it's most of them. So you put yourself in danger for no reason. You didn't stop anything from happening.
Right. I'm looking at the church services that are going on, and we've talked about this before. And it's surprising to me that there aren't armed guards at even the drive-in ones where they're not actually meeting in person and they're still getting ticketed and whatnot. Like, that would make sense to have a line of armed guards around people who are gathering in, first of all, in any way they want, but at least in this way too. They're actually complying with, I don't even want to say the state necessarily, with their idea of safety, because obviously they're not complying with the state if they're still getting ticketed. But it's a good idea to have guards around there and say, no, you're not going to ticket these people, and then actually back it up. And we've talked before the show, we were talking about the stuff that I like to see, and that's a lot of Christopher Ledbetter's videos. He's a combat vet, and he has a group with him that are ready to go, and they go out in various levels of non-compliance and do First Amendment audits, Second Amendment audits, all the different shit, and go and talk to nurses and all the doctors, and well, I don't even know about doctors, but nurses and people protesting about the stay-at-home orders and telling people to stay in. And they're getting just slammed in media. Like, there's a lot of fake media coverage going on with pictures of them and stuff like that. But they're also ready and make it known that they're there peacefully, but they will defend themselves if they're pushed. And that means pushed in any way. If any cop wants to get violent with them, they will defend themselves. And I think that they will do that because he's been through his own kind of mini personal Boogaloo already, and he's ready. He's going to be on the show next week too, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. But that's the kind of resolve I'm looking at, and to be honest, I'm not near the level of prepared that he is, and most of the people who are Boogie Boys are not either, and we need to get that way.
Yeah, it's not just prepared individually. I mean, we've basically already covered it, but we don't even know how to communicate with each other at all. I mean, I think small groups do, but small groups aren't what's going to be essential in this thing. There's a lot of fucking cops, man, and there's a lot of people that support the cops that I think are going to want to shoot at us too. We're talking about a lot of people, and small groups able to communicate, but the large amount of us not being able to, it's going to be a problem.
Mm-hmm. Right. I don't know if I can summarize, I guess, what my thoughts are on all this. God damn it, I can barely talk. What my thoughts on all this are, it's just being ready, having that resolve. And if you're going to go somewhere and do something like this, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. And everybody's reasons are different. And the reason we're talking about this is because we don't agree with the reasonings of going there and being okay with being arrested or having your cars towed or something like that. If the point is to send a message, then send that message.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say, like, I want to try and not be too specific, but yesterday I sent you a message and I was pissed off yesterday. I was not having a good day just with all the shit going on. And I said something along the lines, sometimes I think about going out on my own. Mm-hmm. And I want to encourage people not to do that. Mm-hmm. I think some of us have those thoughts sometimes because we see this and we see nothing happening. But that's not going to accomplish anything either. You're just going to get yourself killed. And so message one of us, expand the communication when you're having feelings like that. And when you're feeling that passion, like I was feeling yesterday, where it's higher than normal, that's when you are going to have the drive to fix the problems that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody's got to stay smart. And yeah, it's definitely not, I don't think it's a good idea to lone wolf it. We see what happens when people lone wolf it. And it's also, it's bad optics. It's just a real convoluted mess. But as far as the passion that you're talking about, that's something I wanted to talk about too, because there's a ton of people who make memes and share quotes from the founding fathers of the United States and whatnot. And you see a lot of crossover with that kind of sect of Boogaloo thought and I guess the whole closed border kind of stuff. Like I was looking through a thread in a Boogaloo group today about arming people in an ICE facility. It was a Boogaloo side quest, break into an ICE facility, arm them, get them out. And the entire thread was just full of people saying the boog isn't for illegals. And these, I think, are the kind of people that would shoot with the cops. Like, what the fuck is a boog if you're supporting government restrictions?
The boog is for anyone who's tired of tyranny and doesn't want to implement it on someone else. I mean, genuinely, it's for anyone who can comprehend those thoughts. And after something, you mentioned the boog as a philosophy instead of a one-time event. Well, afterwards, if you were to implement tyranny on someone else, once you've won, then you've accomplished nothing and you're an asshole. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you. Those are the kinds of people that we have to look out. And they are in our groups. It's not that they're on the outside, they're on the inside.
Right. And there's a lot of them. And that's the thing I've talked about with a lot of people. Anarchists in this movement are few and far between. It's, if anything, there's a lot of, I would say, big L libertarians. I think minarchists would be pushing it, but there are a lot of 3%ers, Republicans, conservatives, that kind of stuff. So that's another convoluted line to try to figure out as well, because we're sorely outnumbered.
Well, and I worry about the resolve of those people a little bit. How do you reconcile talking about what you're talking about, thinking about doing the things that you're talking about, and then you go vote every 4 years? I don't know how do you reconcile those two things? Because to me, those things cannot exist together in one mind. Mm-hmm. They can't. You're talking about killing tyranny and then just implementing it again. And I just don't understand how you can hold those thoughts at the same time.
Right. Well, a lot of the founding fathers were great thinkers, but they definitely had their shortcomings. And there's conspiracies that, or maybe it's true, I don't fucking know, but there's thoughts out there that the United States was set up intentionally by people other than just the founding fathers. It was bankrolled to be the next world superpower by those shady shadow cabal that runs everything or whatever. But I think that a lot of them were really smart and really did have good hearts when it came to freedom. But then they fucked up, and I'm not sure exactly why they did. But I think that their fuck up, which was, returning to a form of government and making the Constitution that we've seen to be powerless to stop whatever tyranny we're seeing now, and any of the actions from government we see now, or authorizing it, as Spooner said, that's a major fuck up, and that's what a lot of people want to go back to. And they say, well, if only we just abide by the Constitution and protect it. So what's the difference, between how we got to where we are now and going back and starting over? Why do they think that we're not just going to go the same route?
Well, and the Constitution doesn't stop bullets. I mean, it just doesn't. One thing I want to point out is, I think people have a hard time understanding that someone can have, or many people can have, really great quotes where you can look at the quotes and say, wow, that person has a great mind. They're a smart person. They think well and they talk well. So you can extract a quote from someone and still be like, yeah, but that guy was a piece of shit. Mm-hmm. And still appreciate the quote for what it is. I mean, there are philosophies that terrible people have laid out that are potentially good ideas. It's just when they're implemented by terrible people, they're not good ideas anymore.
Mm-hmm. Right. And, a lot of the stuff back then was rife with contradiction, them saying that all men are created equal and still continuing slavery and, only letting land holding males vote, that kind of stuff. It's just clear hypocrisy. So I don't really understand that stuff, but
to kind of try and answer your actual question, a lot of people seem to think that we all just have this idea of a utopia. Fortunately, most of us are pretty smart. We know that all things have their problems. We know it's not going to be perfect. We know that there are going to be tyrants in the midst. There's no utopia in my mind. There's problems everywhere. It's going to stay that way, but we can mitigate a lot of them with not enforcing tyranny on people. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why they think that we think there's some heavenly place at the end of all of this. And I don't know why they can, again, hold the simultaneous thoughts of, I'm going to vote, but also boog, and their existence in a post-boog life isn't going to be a contradiction in and of itself.
Well, I think a lot of people...
Those are the kind of people that...
Sorry, go ahead.
Those are the kind of people that I worry about in a post-boog world, because to me, those are the kind of people that are going to try and fill a power vacuum.
Right.
With force, with tyranny, because you want to, obviously, you put your ballot in every 4 years or every 2. You want to enforce your opinions and your tyranny on other people. Why is it going to be any different once all the current tyrants are gone? Because I think, to me, you're going to be a problem afterwards.
And there's you can clearly see that the people saying this are not of the mind that all men are created equal either, because they're not willing to let people live their life how they want to live it, no matter what. And that's really, I like that that's been picked up by a lot of people, and that's, I just want to be left alone. Especially that there was a meme about the HuffPost article that came out, fucking Huffington Post. I think it's their second article about Boogaloo, and it's just full of fear porn and The Boogaloo is all right-wing extremists and stuff, which there are some, but it's a bunch of people who want to be left the fuck alone from getting run over roughshod by government. That's the one thing that everybody agrees on. Realistically, though, I think most people see it as another civil war, even more so than a revolution. I don't think most people see it as, we're going to tear it all down and either build it from the foundations that it started at or build it from something else. I think they see it as a civil war. And honestly, I think the lines are leftists versus, conservatives or whatever. I think that's probably the biggest divide in Boogaloo and anarchy and everything. It seems like the left-right paradigm is strong everywhere.
Yeah, and a lot of the people that we're talking about that are in our movement, they have just adopted the word Boogaloo and used that to replace civil war. That's it. They look at this as a civil war because their hate is only with the left. It's not, really, they've just used it as their new word for civil war.
Right. And it's pretty close to how it started out. Civil War II, Electric Boogaloo, as far as I know. But also there's people back.
It's obviously taken on a different meaning.
Right. Yeah. Well, the memes show that. And I guess that's another thing that bugs me too, is because these protests are starting to look more and more like the memes. Wearing Hawaiian shirts, underplate carriers and whatnot, and carrying thick boog flags and shit like that. And that's LARPing, to be honest. Like, I know it's fun and stuff, but if you look at people who are, like, once again, I'll reference Christopher Ledbetter and his voice, they're not running around wearing Hawaiian shirts and shit. They're in fucking gear. They're really geared up, and they're going out and they're talking very well. They're being tactful in the way that they communicate, but they're also being firm, and they're not, hee-hawing around and joking and, shouting boog and all this stuff, all the random bullshit to get attention. They're making their presence known firmly and standing with that resolve and getting the message out in a way, in just face-to-face interactions, whether it be with cops or people on the street that ask about them, and the results are much more positive.
Yeah, I mean, he had that video with that guy where they talked to him for like 10 minutes. And he, seemed like he had a lot of thoughts in common with them. And, that's just a random dude on the street. It doesn't take much to get people to recognize and admit, because I think a lot of people have it in the back of their minds that government is tyranny. And basically, in every instance, you can't, it's just, and it's not that hard to get them to admit it, but someone has to get them to do so. The thing with the Hawaiian shirts and stuff like that, those memes are funny. I like them. If you want to go out and you want to go in your full gear with your Hawaiian shirt on or your patch or whatever, dude, I don't give a shit. But just don't let them impose their will on you once it's time. If it's a joke to you to that extent, don't put yourself in danger, and just don't go. But if you're gonna go and you want to wear that shirt, that's fine. I'm totally cool with that. Just have some resolve once it's time.
Yeah, well, of course, everybody can do whatever they want. What I'm seeing the most, the thing that bugs me about the optics of all wearing the memes, is there was a Photoshop picture going around yesterday that ended up getting taken down of a guy in a Hawaiian shirt with a plate carrier and like one of those scary clown face looking graphics on his balaclava or whatever on his neck gaiter. And it was Photoshopped to make it look like he was yelling into the face of a nurse, Boogaloo versus a nurse. And it was this whole big fucking thing. And it's just, yeah, the optics there are what bug me, and they're going to use that, I guess, is the worst thing, is trying to take whatever symbols that they see on people and associate those with, far right, alt right, extremist, whatever, the things that you see in those circles as well. So it's a little harder to do that when you're dressed more boog professional versus boog casual, I guess we could call it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think in a big part of it is that it's a clout thing. It's okay, look at me. I went to this peaceful protest with my Hawaiian shirt on, but so like look at this picture I took. Look at this video I took. I am really cool with my Hawaiian shirt on. And again, wear whatever the fuck you want, but I think a lot of us see through that a little bit. And I think people need to recognize that a lot of us do see through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people see through it. And also, be aware that people are making a lot of money off of selling stuff. And I guess I'm not one to talk either, even though I haven't sold any of them, because I did make an Igloo camo shirt and throw it up on the Threadless at the beginning of, the boog surge. But people are making a lot of money with morale patches and flags and custom Hawaiian shirts and all that stuff. And I was thinking about that when we were talking about a project that we're going to be working on with some other Borthers here coming up. But, what is it? Boogalations 556. Thou shalt, if thou dost not own a rifle, thou shalt sell thine Xbox and buy one. That's why mainly I haven't put any money into boog brand gear, I guess, because I want functional gear, actual gear that works. And not everybody can be Gucci. Not everyone can have a fucking basement full of Gucci gear and buy all the boog flags and all that stuff. And if you're serious and you want to stay alive and be effective, then you need the bang for your buck when it comes to supposed guns, packs, med kits, all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people, I'm just, making a broad assumption here, but I think a lot of people in our movement probably come from a similar background in terms of, again, I'm being very broad here, so I'm not trying to offend anybody, but from a, potentially where they grew up scarce, where it was not much extra to go around. And that mindset follows you into adulthood. And I think a lot of times when I'm looking at gear I want, I have to convince myself, just because of how my mind works, okay, it's worth buying this to protect myself. I know usually when I have extra money, my mind tells me to save it, but this is worth having. So I'm going to get it. I go through a process. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are probably similar in that mindset. And you've got to understand, your saved money, I'm not saying don't pay your fucking bills, pay your bills, but your saved money isn't going to, it's going to be worthless, first of all, if everything collapses. And it could have gone towards gear that would not be worthless if everything collapses.
Mm-hmm. And that even includes a collapse that's not, say Boogaloo. That's like worst case scenario, economic collapse, whatever, what have you. You're going to want gear because things are going to break down societally. And yeah, so I kind of teased. Go ahead.
I was just gonna add on to your point. I mean, even if it's not the kind of collapse that we've been talking about for the last 30 minutes, if it's full economic collapse, you got to go hunt your food now. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's that is just a fact. That is how it's going to be. And if you don't have the proper gear for that, you're going to be in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not just hunting, but keeping people from taking what you have, because that will happen. I mean, I'm surprised we haven't seen more rioting. I guess it's not as bad here as it is in other places. I guess in India, a lot of people are starving, they're saying, due to these lockdowns and stuff. But people's lives are being ruined now for sure. The government has rolled out a ton of money, money printer go burr. But I'm, as what you said before too, as far as that, not wanting to part with your money because you're used to saving more. I do get really anxious leading up to a purchase when I'm, researching what's the best thing I can get for the money that I'm willing to spend right now. And it takes a lot to click that order button or go buy it from the store or whatever. And then I'm anxious for a while after, and I check my funds and make sure the bills are good and whatnot for, 3-4 times, even after I order whatever gear I'm ordering. And so that's
exactly the same way. It's ridiculous.
It seems ridiculous, but it is anxiety triggering a bit. But that's part of the project I was teasing before. I think I'm going to continue with the name that I had let you guys know, is Booging on a Budget. I want to give access to what I've found and what we've all found on the team to be, the best bang for your buck as far as gear that you can get. Because not everybody can spend $400 to $600 on a ballistic helmet, but you can find surplus helmets for $170, maybe less in other places, all that kind of stuff. What not to skimp on, because if it's something that's going to save your life, you probably don't want to skimp on it. And just all the decision making around that. And I think that we and the guys on the team are in pretty good, unique positions to be able to help this out, help people find this stuff if they're looking.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, something you mentioned about, you probably don't want to skimp on something that could potentially save your life, but what in a kit can you skimp on that we can allocate to go towards something else that shouldn't be skimped on, or, stuff like that. There's a lot of things and topics that can fall into booging on a budget that I think we're going to cover. I'm not sure. Have you decided how often you're going to do an episode yet?
I'm hoping that we're going to be doing it weekly. I'm hoping once a week, and I'm hoping as often as possible for posts on Facebook and whatnot.
Okay. So I think a big thing about that people are really going to appreciate is, especially with it just being all in one place and then not having to check all the fucking websites because there's 10 plus of them at a time, is, especially if it's weekly, talking about for each episode, looking at these span of websites and finding out what deals they've got, just posting it or talking about it. I think that's going to be a cool thing to do. One thing that we talked about a week or so ago is for someone like me, or for someone who's the opposite of me, who's really big, or someone like me who's got a smaller frame, it's hard for me to find shit that fits properly. And it takes me a while to do that. And I don't want to skimp on a plate because a 10 by 12 plate fits me well, but the carriers don't. And now I've found something in between, and that kind of shit we want to talk about, we want to put out there. If it's the opposite, someone's really big, you want to talk about what can be found for them. So just gear in terms of, we're not all the same. We're not all the same body type. So we can talk about how to help people in that way. And there's a bunch of other stuff we can talk about. I mean, it's, like I said, a lot of topics fall into this category.
Absolutely. And the cheapest item of all is knowledge, because it's free. You can get that anywhere. But a lot of people don't know what to look for, myself included, in a lot of stuff. And it takes quite a while to peruse the internet and figure out what you're basing your decisions on. Like, one thing that comes to mind is, your loadout style. Because I'm, like we've talked about, transitioning from more of a traditional family bug out bag to a more mid-range scout or ranger, I guess, setup. And there's a huge fucking difference in those two setups, from civilian to more military or contractor style. And even stuff like going outside and learning how to start a fire, anything like that, tactics, strategies, all that stuff, that's free. But like I said, not being in the military, I don't have much to base that off of, because that's another thing. That's kind of the baseline, right? Is military, ex-military contractors, because that's pretty much who we would be going up against, should anything kick off, them and cops. But a lot of ex-military are cops as well. So that's, if someone knows of a better baseline to build that off of, fucking tell me. But
absolutely, tell me too, because I'll be curious to know. It's, you can have whatever opinion you want about military or whatever else, but for the most part, they do teach them to survive. And whenever they do defect and come over to our side, it's really fucking valuable, because they the the military is evil, but they're good at some things, and that's killing and surviving, unfortunately, but also fortunately in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just through some ex-military people we know, and history, we're seeing that asymmetrical warfare is obviously the way that the boog goes, no matter which boog you're in throughout time. It's that's the way it happens, and having students of history and especially military history to draw information from is really valuable as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't need to say names, but it's, we saw something just last night where it's, someone who just got out of basic training who, you got to be a little bit suspicious of that. And it's like, kind of digging in, like, hey, are you going to, if shit pops off, are you going to be on our side? What are you going to do? This, and that. And it's like, first of all, watch out for people like that,
Mm-hmm.
but also talk to them. And if they are willing to be on our side, bring them over. It's extremely valuable, and we need them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a weird line we're walking. But yeah, behind the project is mostly, at least in my heart, is trying to keep people safe and prepared. And like we started out at the beginning of the show, goofing off and showboating and going out lone wolf and all the stupid fucking things you could possibly do is not staying safe. And it's not only not safe for you, it's unsafe for anybody associated with you. Because look at the guy who got arrested before the protest. He's arrested, and his name is linked to all these other people through social media and other stuff. And that was one of the things they were looking at as well from a story I read, was they were looking at his social media posts, I think the day before the protest. And that's part of the reason why he got arrested, as well as his neighbors. But it's just, think before you act. Think a lot on everything.
Yeah, and you know what? This is gonna sound, I don't want to sound like too condescending, but during that time that you would be lone wolfing or just being a fucking moron in general, you could be at the range or something.
Mm-hmm.
And you could be shooting, you could be at home looking at more gear to protect yourself more. And dude, if you just go lone wolf and get shot, you definitely didn't do anything for yourself. And I'm not sure I can say you really did anything for the rest of us either.
Right.
I think a lot of people, when they feel that passion, it's a mindset of like, well, if I just take a couple with me, I mean, maybe if you can convince yourself of that, but we still need you. We still want you. I understand everything's hot right now. I understand it's stressful, but we need you, and we need things like the project you're talking about, booging on a budget, to help people. In this podcast in general, a lot of what we talked about is when you feel that passion, use it to get better, use it to talk to us, expand communication, and that's just how we get better. It just is.
It is. Yep. Yeah. I don't know. This is tough talking about it, especially because of the reactions you get when you say stuff like this. I don't know. That's a whole another thing to dive into. But like you said, we do need everybody, and the idea that we just want to be left alone, being kind of the backbone philosophy of Boogaloo, I think is a really, really good thing. Because you do try to find the peaceful means to be left alone first. Violence is generally
Absolutely.
the
Yep.
final action, the final way to express you saying no because it's gone too far. And I think that's a good path to take. Not just with Boogaloo, but with anarchy. That's why a lot of anarchists get pissed about the whole idea of the Boogaloo, because, well, we should be doing it peaceful. We should be showing people a better product. And you can still do that and back it up with defensive force. And if you don't back it up with defensive force, you don't have shit.
Well, dude, I've got a wife and kid, man. I don't want to fight.
Mm-hmm.
I literally just want to be left alone. I literally just want them to be left alone. I don't want to do all this shit. But again, towards the beginning, we talked about if the fight's being brought to us, at some point, we got to say, okay, the fight has now been brought, even though it's been brought for years.
Mm-hmm.
Peace is no longer an option, and I know that goes around in a meme a lot with the fucking duck, or peace was never an option. But I feel like it might be that time. They're just going to keep killing people. There's nothing stopping them. There's no law stopping them from killing more people.
Right.
There's no people stopping them from killing more people. So we gotta come to a consensus.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why it hasn't really come to that is because there hasn't been much in the way of physical push. I know there have been murders and stuff like that, but I mean on a mass scale, like the government pushing physically. But the idea of a forced vaccine or markers that you're, clear and free from corona, you don't got the Rona, that might be a pushing point. That might be something that gets people off their asses, but there's also a lot of people calling for that who aren't with government. So things are going to continue to get interesting. I would say things are going to get interesting. They're already fucking interesting. Almost every day I look at what's going on around the world. First thing in the morning, I'm like, what the fuck? It's just fucking wild, but it's going to get nasty.
Yeah, I think it's just going to keep getting worse. There was something that came out, one of, I don't know, Virginia Department of Health Services or whatever the fuck it's called. One of their top people came out and talked about how phase 1 of reopening Virginia could take 2 years. And it's just like, oh, okay, if you really want to do that, because you're really asking for it at that point. People aren't rioting yet, and I've actually been wrong. I thought it was going to start sooner, but I think it's still coming. And you just can't force people to starve and not feed their kids.
Yeah, I think the amount of money that the government is pumping out for different forms of stimulus checks and welfare and what have you is definitely a Band-Aid. It's only temporary, because I can't not think that at some point prices are going to start to reflect. They're already starting to reflect all the extra money being pumped in, but in a major way. Like, we're going to see really expensive food. I don't know. Inflation. I'm not an economist, but this looks like a lot of different shit.
I'm not either, but it's not just that the prices are going to raise from all the money that's been pumped out. They're going to stop pumping out money eventually. It's going to happen. So not only have you now inflated everything, now you've stopped giving people the money that they need after you force them to not work. So I don't want to sound like a doomer, but it's probably only going to get worse from here. And I think people should expect that.
Definitely going to get worse. Be prepared. I think we can call that a show, homie. We're just about there.
All right.
Fucking A. Good stuff. Hard stuff to talk about.
It was a good one.
Yep. I think we slogged through it pretty well. And keep an eye out for more booging on a budget stuff, because it's not just gear. Hopefully some learning, some tactics, that kind of stuff. And yeah, thanks to the patrons. Got a new patron yesterday. That was really awesome of you. And you'll hear, you already did hear your name in the opening ads. So thanks a lot, everybody. Take care. Total freedom, no exceptions. Enemy of the State's Dank Podstash is sponsored by Anarchy Lifting. Go to anarchyliftingcoaching.com to learn more.